Hi, I'm JM Hollis and I write stuff sometimes. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Today is not about my project, it's about somebody else's. And it's technically not a project, it's a published book. I wanted to try to convince you to read my all-time favorite book / read the series. And that's because it just had its book birthday on Tuesday for its traditional release. It was indie published at one point. It's not anymore, obviously, but it was picked up by Bramble. And that book is Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. And I love this book. Not in love with the new cover, but it's fine. But I love this book. I love this series. It's amazing. Read it. No, but to say that I'm obsessed would be an understatement because I have this book, which is the traditional published US version. It doesn't have the sprayed edges like the UK special edition did, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And then this is the undercover art on the case laminate. It's the same on both sides. And it looks very similar to what's under the hardcover of the indie one. But anyway, to say that I'm obsessed is a little bit of an understatement because this is the paperback. Let me try to make it aesthetic. This is the paperback indie copy. This is the hardcover indie copy. So I have 3 versions of this book. And I have 2 versions of book 2, which are the paperback and the hardcover, and book 3, and have already pre-ordered the traditional covers and the traditional books for the first book, the second book, and the third book. The second book comes out in December, I think, end of November. And then the other one comes out in January, February, March, somewhere in that range. But I wanted to try to convince you to read this book because it's my favorite book. It's my entire personality. And if I can get more people converted to reading it, all the better. And I also kind of wanted to talk about tie it into the differences between plot driven and character driven stories, because this one is definitely a character driven story. The characters are so fleshed out and so real, and their development is like the kind of the most important thing in the story. At least in the first book, it gets the character development's still there, but the plot picks up in book 2 and 3. But a lot of people that are plot driven readers like her other series better, which is the Crowns and Iaxia series, where it's sets of duets. And that one is more plot driven. This one is definitely more character driven. And so people that are more invested in like action and like fast pace would like Crowns and Iaxia. People that are okay with a slower pace and really delving into character work would really love this series, I think, in my opinion. But what is it about? I was going to read the back of the indie paperback, but I realized that it kind of spoils something that happens in the beginning of the book, which I don't know. Can you spoil things that are in the beginning of the book if it's in like the first chapter? I don't know. But I noticed that the blurb for the traditional version is different than the blurb for the indie version. So I'll read the traditional one and then just kind of talk about it. So it says, a former slave fighting for justice, a reclusive warrior who no longer believes it exists, and a dark magic that will entangle their fates. Ripped from a forgotten homeland as a child, Tisana learned how to survive with nothing but a sharp wit and a touch of magic. But the night she tries to buy her freedom, she barely escapes with her life. Desperate to save the best friend she left behind, Tisana journeys to the Orders, the most powerful organizations of magic wielders in the world. To join their ranks, she must complete an apprenticeship with Maxentarius Farleon, a handsome and reclusive fire wielder who despises the Orders. The Order's intentions are cryptic, and Tisana must prove herself under the threat of looming war. But even more dangerous are her growing feelings for Maxentarius. The bloody past he wants to forget may be the key to her future, or the downfall of them both. Tasana will stop at nothing to save those she abandoned, even if it means gambling in the Order's deadly games, even if it means sacrificing her heart, even if it means wielding death itself. I actually really like that blurb. It it I do think that the romance between Max and Tasana is kind of played up a bit in this blurb as opposed to the other one where the indie version is very much focused on like the plot and stuff. Whereas this one that comments about Max makes it feel like it's more romantic-y than it is. It does get more romantic as the books go on, but the first book is not like inherently romantic. Or like it's not romantasy, I should say. Because for me, romantasy is where you can't separate the romance and the fantasy and still have a complete book. Like they're so intertwined and they work together that you can't have a book without both of them. Whereas this one I would say is romantic fantasy because you could pull the romance out and still have a fantastic fantasy book. I don't know why you'd want to pull the romance out because the romance is everything. But you could theoretically, if you wanted to, I don't know, be weird, pull the romance out and still really enjoy this book. So, I'll show those after. Never mind. I have annotated, and you can't really see the tabs because they're beige on the paperback, and slightly faded. But I annotated the paperback and I annotated the hardcover. And I am debating whether I want to annotate this version as well because I do want to reread the series, especially now that the books are coming out. I want to read them like as the traditional books are coming out. But I wanted to convince you to read this book. I'll go over the tropes at the very end. So if you're only looking for a quick trope thing, I'm sorry. I want to get into like quotes and different things like that before I get into the tropes. But I wanted to read the first paragraph. Also, can we talk about the art? Like, I love this. And then, like, the chapter has a little butterfly. Like, it's so cute. Anyway, I want it because it showcases the character work that she does and the fact that, like, you can get so much about this character from just a paragraph. I think is really powerful. So I thought that I would share. It says, 1, 2, 3. When I danced, I never stopped counting. The truth was, I was a terrible dancer. I wasn't sure that I believed in the concept of talent at all, but even if I did, I could recognize I didn't have any. At least not when it came to dancing. But talent, I had learned, was optional. It could be substituted with long nights and early mornings, bleeding feet, obsessively memorized footwork. No one needed talent when you had brute force. And despite my willowy size and my unassuming doe-eyed smile, I had more brute force than anyone. So, that's Tasana. She very much is like, she'd be the one that, like, if the TV broke, she'd be the one banging the TV until it worked again. Like, she's very much like, I will force things to work and I will force myself to be what I need to be. Like, if I'm not good enough to do it as is, like, I will force myself to practice and practice over and over and over again until I get there. And it doesn't matter how long it takes, I'm going to do it. And so I thought that this paragraph was really powerful for character work because it's short, but you already get that, like, she's stubborn. You get that she, you know, is hardworking because of the bleeding feet, the early mornings, long nights, etc. And so you get a lot from her character just in that short little bit, and I love that. I love it so much. I marked some quotes that I wanted to share that are not spoilery, so like they don't spoil plot. So I will share those, and hopefully they will also convince you to pick up this book. So this is where she's already met Max and she's weaseled her way into his house finally because he is like, no. Um, but she wants to cut her hair because of things that happened in her past and she just wants to get rid of it. So she is trying to ask for scissors. And it's just, I remember when I read this scene, like I laughed so hard. Do you have, I racked my exhausted brain searching for the right Aaron word. It says, I held up my two fingers, bringing them together, making snip snip sounds with my tongue. This thing. Max gave me a look of deadpan confusion. Huh? It says snip snip, I repeated, frustrated, bringing my fingers together again. He stared at me like I was insane. The Threeny word, of course, was screaming in my ears, even as the Aaron one was nowhere to be found. Oh, Max snapped his fingers in realization, then opened a drawer and held up a pair of gold shears. Scissors. I thought it was really funny. Um, I love how language is done in this book, and oh my god, there's a part in the second book, I won't spoil it, but language comes back around and it's so sweet. Anyway, sorry. Oh, this one. On a particularly cold day, he stepped outside, shivered, looked up at the sky, and declared, I'm not made for this, before wandering back into the house. I quickly learned that Max was apparently only made for an exceptionally narrow set of environments, temperatures, activities, and interactions. And then this one, it kind of shows her character again with like the brute force. She is uh, failing at doing the task that he wants her to do with her magic. And he says, we can stop for the day. Even experienced wielders would struggle with this. You don't have to get it tonight. But I didn't look away from my translucent flower as I replied, no. What? No, we do not stop. He paused mid-step, looking perplexed. This isn't typically the context in which I'd like to hear that, but my answer is the same nonetheless. He turned back around, slumping to the ground, quirking one eyebrow at me in a skeptical challenge. If you can do it, I can do it. Oh, I could do it. So it showcases her tenacity and the fact that she's not going to give up. Even though like her head is pounding and she's like physically getting weak from using all this magic. And she's still like, no, I'm not giving up. And then there's another part that's the last one that I'll share because I could literally go through all these tabs. Oh, I lied. There's one more before the one I want to share. They're in the water, like just swimming around, and and Max is showing her like what he can do with his magic, and it says at first there was nothing. Then bubbles started to rise around him faster and faster, like the water was leaping to a boil, or a particularly childish image popped into my head and refused to leave. I couldn't help myself. I pinched my nose. Max, I breathed aghast, and Thrill, it is very rude to do that in front of others. For a moment, Max just looked confused. Then realization swept over his face, and his mouth flattened into a very tense, very straight line. Tasana, ascended, help me. Was that a fart joke? There's two more. They go together, so I'm going to count it as one. I'm cheating. It's my video. Our life settled into a pulse, a heartbeat, a collection of breaths. In the silence between them, I memorized the cadence of Max's bare footsteps padding down the hallways at night, the way one single muscle in his throat twitched when he was stressed, the whisper of a laugh that always followed one of my quips, however unfunny. I learned that one side of his smile always started first, the left side, a fraction of a second before the right, and that he loved ginger tea above all else in the list of things he wasn't made for. About all else in the list of things he wasn't made for. And in turn, he quietly memorized me too. I knew he did, because one day I realized he had long ago stopped asking me how I took my tea, and that we mysteriously always had a never-ending stock of raspberries, even though I knew he didn't like them. And he would ask me in quiet ways about my life, always in the sleepy moments at the end of the day. Tell me about Cyril. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about Nazarene. And then going along with that, it says, we had carved out these small, intimate spaces for each other in our lives, and by some miracle of human denial, neither of us had thought about what that would inevitably mean. Now, for the first time, I realized the breadth of the gaping absence we would leave in each other. That, at least, he would leave in me. I literally am going to start this tonight and reread it because I just am in love. The last thing before we do tropes, I wanted to show. So I made these bookmarks in Canva, and I worked really hard and did like major graphic editing in Canva, given like what the platform can do. And so I wanted to share those. I have many of the same thing because they printed it wrong. Anyway, I took them and made the image larger on a different canvas size to do a pen board for my journal, or not my journal, my planner, because I have my Hemlock and Oak planner coming for next year, and it's a 70 GSM, and I was worried about stuff going through the paper. So these bookmarks that I made are Daughter of No Worlds themed, and the first one, tilt this way, is a snake with a rose and a flower, because a rose and a flower, that's the same damn thing, JM. A rose and a leafy bit, because that's so much better. And it says Mysterious Snake Man, because that's something that Desana calls him at one point. And if you read the book, then the snake makes a whole lot of sense, and the flowers make a whole lot of sense. It's not a spoiler to say it. Max keeps a garden of flowers, and the reason why he does becomes apparent later. But that's why I did the flowers with the snake, because that's Max. And then the other one I did is for Desana, and her thing is butterflies, so I have the butterflies coming out, and then stars, and it says you are breathtakingly functional, because that is something Max says to her at some point in the book when he does a certain thing, and it's like one of my favorite quotes, and I thought it would be funny for a planner for the pen board to say you're breathtakingly functional. Sorry if I'm in a slightly different place. One of my dogs would not stop barking, and then he decided to open the door, because my door doesn't close all the way, or it does, it just doesn't latch, so the dogs can push it open, and so he pushed it open, and Sierra, the other dog, left, and so I had to get up and close the door. Anyway, for tropes, it's, I'm gonna hold up this one because I like this cover better. It's mentor mentee. It is grumpy kind of sunshine. It is forced proximity. They're never really enemies, but it is a dislike, a reluctance to lovers, a reluctance friends to lovers. So if you like any of those tropes, I would check this one out. If any of the quotes that I read interested you, check it out. So I will leave you with one last quote, because I just can't help myself, and I will let you go after that. But this is a reminder to everyone out there, because even if you aren't getting it from outside sources, a lot of people deal with criticism from themselves, about themselves. And so this quote from Max, I think, is something that we should all keep in mind, even if it's ourselves that are bringing us down. And it says, "The way I look at it," he said very solemnly, so quiet that his words slipped into the air like steam, "you didn't forget what you were. I think you remembered, and I hope no one ever again has the fucking audacity to tell you otherwise." That, ladies and gentlemen, is Max Antarius Farleone. So, I hope that no one, including yourself, has the fucking audacity to tell you anything other than you are amazing and wonderful, and you can do this. You are so talented. You can do this. We can do this. So So don't let anyone tell you otherwise, even if it's yourself. All right. I'll let you guys go. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below. Like the video if you like the video, and subscribe if you wanna. And I'll see you next time.